Hello and welcome to Season 4 of the Sunday Podcast, presented by sportsshoes.com. I'm Ollie Lum.
And I'm Matt Seddon.
This podcast is all about elite distance running in the UK.
We're here to give you all the latest news updates around the sport,
as well as weekly interviews with athletes and coaches.
Stay up to date by following us on Instagram and X at Sunday Podcast.
And make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel too, where we post athlete workout videos, shoe reviews and more.
Thanks for listening, and as always, we hope you enjoy the episode.
Okay, hello, welcome back to another episode. Matt and I just chatting off air about our own kind of mediocre running careers, because I hung the spikes up, 6 months ago now, and Matt's getting close. So any of you want to kind of motivate Matt to keep going, just make sure you kind of slide in his DMs and tell him to grind it out. But now, in all seriousness, we were just chatting about how it's pretty can be pretty tough, kind of at the non-elite end of the sport sometimes, like when it's supposed to be fun, but actually there's quite a lot of pressure, I feel like, to just like train hard and race hard, because otherwise you're just not running well, are you, mate?
Mate, do you know what I'm struggling with the most right now, and maybe there's a few people out there that can relate, is it's just not sociable for me right now. Obviously I coach most nights anyway, so when I'm coaching, I never want to be this person who's training and coaching in the same group. But yeah, so I'm doing everything on my own at weird hours, weird times of day. I feel like there's no consistency, there's no routine. The biggest thing is it's just all solo, and I've just never been one of those people who actually responds to grinding. I think you've got to be really, really driven, and you've got to have some pretty big internal goals, external goals, and I'm just not sure I have those right now. And I think that's what I'm struggling with the most. And so I'm just thinking, like, you know, what am I doing this for? I think I'm falling out of love with it a little bit because of that. You put pressures on. I don't even know why I'm putting pressure on myself, but I'm just like, you know, trying to run respectable times in training, and it's just not coming. I've been nursing injuries on and off for the last like 3 years now as well. Like, stuff in my back just keeps coming back, and problems there. So hey, it's a little bit of a depressing start to the episode, to be honest.
Yeah, well, one thing it's made me think about recently, you know how everyone sort of, you coaches and people in the sport sort of tell you when you're young, you peak at 28, right? You peak at 30, for example.
That's grinding on me.
That's when you'll have your best running, you know. And like, yeah, maybe physiologically, like you would, but I've not made it to 28, you know, to 27 at the moment. Like, I've not made it to the peak of my physiological career. So actually, maybe I should have just trained a bit harder when I was younger, you know, because it was never going to get there. Like, unless you've got funding or just kind of, I guess, just a bit more time on your hands, for example. Obviously, like, look, I could go all in if I really wanted to. Like, I'm not trying to claim that it's a sob story or anything like that. But I do think that sometimes, you sort of, you're like, oh well, I've got loads of time to keep running and whatnot. But I think, especially like university years, for example, you get 3 or to 5 years if you do a master's, for example, where you can really just crank out a load of training, and then after that, it's hard to replicate that unless you sort of make some sacrifices elsewhere, isn't it?
It is, mate. Those years, you know, without sounding one of these, you know, old people, because we're definitely not. But those years do fly by, and yeah, you kind of find yourself where we are now, and we're just like, Jesus, you know, we've got a lot going on in life, and I think that's another thing as well. Like, I just feel like my life's a bit chaotic right now, and yeah, no routine, and training's all over the place, and oh God, I can't get a rhythm, and I think, obviously, one of the biggest things I preach when I coach is just strength in numbers. You look at, well, I fully believe that you need to be in it with people. It's very, very hard to go alone. I think there's few athletes who can go alone, and I think there's few events you can go alone in as well. And I think anything sort of 800 meters and below, I think it's doable. Anything longer than that, I really do think, you know, you're talking about getting miles in really to be any good in this sport. And it's got to be sociable, and you've got to have people there, people around you during sessions, even during runs. And look, obviously, like, we could carry on, but I think you found this as well, didn't you? I think there's a level that everyone's happy to compete at, and
Mm.
I feel like I'm just slipping away from that level. And I think you found this as well. Not to say that we are, you know, high caliber athletes, but I think everyone has their own personal, like, okay, as long as I'm at this level, I'm happy to still put in the work because I'm being somewhat rewarded for it. I feel
I
like
think
I'm
yeah,
now
for me it was
just
just
slipping
like
away from that.
I just got to the point where I was like, look, realistically, I just don't think I'm going to PB again because I don't have the maybe not the time in the day, but I don't have the time in the day in relation to the effort it takes to train as hard as I have in the past. So I'm not going to PB by training less hard than I did when I ran my PBs, for example.
Mm,
That was my basic look at it, and I was like, whatever that level that is for you, potentially, like if you're listening, then sometimes that is you just don't want to do that because for me, I think that's always what it was. Didn't really obviously I cared how quick I was, but I only cared how quick I was in relation to like improving every year. It didn't really matter what that
yeah,
was. But once
yeah.
that was like, actually, I don't think I can do the mileage that I was doing when I ran that personal best, for example, then I was like, well, what's the point?
Yeah,
So
I think that's
blame Matty
it.
Edwards if you're listening. Matty, if you're listening, I'm blaming you because you left me. My housemate last year, we used to crank out the 10 milers after work together, and then I was having to do them on my own. So I was like, yeah, it's actually his fault. So there you go.
Genuinely,
But
like I think with coaching, um, as well, we've both got a very good understanding of actually what it takes to
mm,
be good in this sport. And I think in the back of my mind, I know that I'm never going to hit that sort of training, those sort of workouts to get to that level because I just think my lifestyle's just not conducive to it right now. Also, I think, when I really deep it, I'm not mentally cut out for it either. Like, I'm not
mm.
sure that's actually what I want to be doing with my life. So then I just know I'm just like, well, really, what's the point? Shall I just do parkrun every Saturday morning and have some fun with this thing? And I think you said as well to me, like, it is supposed to be fun. And I feel like once you take yourself out of those fun environments, going down to the club, and this is a message to anyone listening is I think you need to stay involved with a club or a group as long as possible. And look, the training might not be exactly what you want in that group. But I think the social aspect of it is far outweighs the kind of benefits you might get from tweaking a session and doing it on your own and following a slightly different training method.
Mm.
Because I just think in the end, that solo grind will catch up with you.
There you go. Well, yeah, that's our start to the pod this
To be
week. So
continued, I think. I think to be continued.
yeah,
Maybe I just need a few weeks to just tick along, but just yeah, the thought of training right now is just not appealing to me. But I think I'm just going for
yeah.
a
Well, I was just trying to get everyone to start rallying you, mate. So getting Sed's DMs. Maybe I'll start training for a beer mile. So
We
I
need it.
reckon.
We need some external goals. Like we were just joking off air. Like maybe we'll be those morons who let their Garmin coach them and just do these stupid like challenges. Just eat meat for 30 days. Basically become Nick Simmons. Um,
Yeah, minus the athletic caliber, but yeah. Anyway, let's get in some races, mate. Because talking of your hectic schedule, I'm sure everyone saw your excellent commentary down at Podium on the weekend. It looked like a pretty hectic day, mate. So should we start there? Because I know we obviously look. It's no secret that we're supported by Sports Shoes, and we kind of have some links with them. But what a race! Well, I say a race. What an event to put on, and I definitely think it lived up to the hype.
yeah, mate. Let's definitely break it down. Look, big takeaways, big international fields. I thought fantastic racing crowds as well. Look, the venue is a massive one that I think not enough people appreciate. Road races typically you can't see the whole thing. You see snippets of it. People, fly by you. On that, it's like being on the infield of a track. To be honest, it's lane three beer and cheer all over again. So the atmosphere was electric. It started pissing down just before the elite races, which was a real shame because all throughout the afternoon, I'm scratching my head, beginning to wonder if the track's short because people are running. I'm on the commentary. I've got their PBs on paper. They're, people who've never broken 15 minutes before are running 14:30. I'm like,
Mm,
that's a massive, jump to make. Girls who've never broken 17 before running 16:40. Girls who've never hardly broken 16 running 15:30. It was just crazy. There were some really big times going down, and even to the point where so you got the elite men's A, elite men's B, and then you had like the last open race, which was sub 15 minutes. It was one in 14:18. It was ridiculous.
Mm,
And so I was really getting excited and giddy for those A races. And unfortunately, the weather turned, started peeing down. Um, the breeze didn't really pick up, but just a wet, cold, dark track. And it got dark, which I don't think actually the floodlights were amazing. It kind of made for the atmosphere and made for the event. It was a nice touch, but I think it did need to be a little bit brighter. I mean, these people are, running what close to 240 Ks up at the front end. So
mm,
there was that. But yeah, incredible event. And I think both elite races were exciting as well. And there were some great domestic battles going on. I think standout performances. I like the way Will Barnico got after it. I think he was really, really aggressive. And actually, when you go on the lap splits, look, full disclaimer, it's just under a K. It was 976 meters, not a K. But I think Barnico, well, Gebriet and Co. threw in a sort of 230 just outside. Was it second lap? And Barnico pretty much hung on them the whole way. And I think that
mm.
obviously cost him the race. But I think great training for him for World Cross. I think he probably needed it. Um, so there was some nice takeaway. Nick Griggs was the best of the kind of domestic, well, I say Europeans, in fourth. But yeah, do you want to go through some more results, mate?
Yeah, that Nick Griggs obviously 13:39. I think that was the one that caught my eye because he's someone that obviously best event is the mile probably or the 1500 if you like, but he's someone that definitely every time you see him, like you see him a bit on the cross, you see him in a 3K, and you think, oh, maybe this guy's future really is in the 5K. And I think that clock in on the road, like the guy's still an under 20 as well. Like, I think
Mm.
it's so easy to forget because he seems like he's been around for years now. The Nick Grigg still on under 20. I thought fantastic run again, like you say, Barnicoat just behind him, 13:43. Super impressive run, like going off like that. And as you say, if you're going to compete at the World Cross, you need to be able to go with it at the start. You can't go to the World Cross and sit off and try and pick people off because they're not coming back to you. So I think he mentioned to us when he came on the pod earlier in the year that's what he was going to do, was getting to get some fast road races in to get his leg speed going so that he was ready for World Cross. And what I like about this young guy is that he's actually targeting the World Cross. He's not just saying, "Oh, I'm just going to do it because I'm in the team or do it for the experience." He's targeting the World Cross to have a good run, and he's making sure he preps properly for it.
100%. I think when you break it down as well, you've got James West who ran 13:19 at Boston. A few weeks later, James West runs 13:44. Barnico beats him 13:43, and Barnico was, by like that was a. If you're looking for an optimum 5K, he's executed it pretty poorly. To be honest with you, he got trapped in no
Mm,
man's land. He's gone off hard, etc. But I think that was always going to be his game plan. So I think it shows you the caliber he's actually at. I don't think he'll get enough credit for that run on the weekend. So hopefully, yeah, we've got a bit of a World Cross preview coming up. So obviously next weekend now. So hopefully he's in good nick and can bounce off of that. But yeah, on Westy 13:44, Jake Wyman 13:52, solid. Pretty solid from him to be honest. My big bro 13:55 again, so not bad from them too because I know they've had like a little sort of after indoor season break. So they're just kind of building back up. And but mate, Ben Patterson 14:05, we got to shout him out. Um, phew, I mean, yeah, that's some range. It's
mm. I
what is
think
he?
even for all three of those guys you mentioned, like your bro Zach, Jake, and Ben Patterson, like obviously for Zach, you'd think like the steepler, he's like the most endurance based, and obviously Jake Wyman's got a good 3K. But I think all three of those guys are quite speed based athletes, So it's obviously the most for Patterson, but I think it's really promising runs at this time of year, for Zach and Jake as well to be able to kind of put that 5K out. And like you said, the conditions aren't perfect. To be within what 10 seconds of Westy after his run at Boston the other day, you're like, okay, now that
Mm,
puts it in a bit of perspective. And I think if you look at their kind of usual conversions from a 5K or a 3K down to like a chase or a 15, like
mm.
they increase quite a lot. So the strength's there. That's all they need. They don't need to be running 13:30 on the road. So it's promising.
Exactly that. I think when you look at who they're around, it kind of gives you an idea of the conditions are probably worth 10 seconds. So all of those Brits are running a good bit quicker, which I think would have been fantastic to see. On the women's side, though, Abby Donnelly stand out after that in the county's performance. She's getting her legs spinning pre-world cross. Obviously, she's going to need to. But like, yeah, 15-18. And again, she was aggressive and she was actually trapped on her own. She was doing a lot of the work for large periods of the race. And I think look, come the summer, she gets in a good 5K. She's definitely a sub 15-minute 5K runner. I think there's no question.
Mm.
She's put a good chunk on. Courtney Bryant, Verity Ottington, Kate Axford and people like that. And they're low 15-minute runners and under 15-minute runners. So I think we can expect to see something quite special from Donnelly in the summer and at World Cross.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it does show you like cross country is a legitimate stepping stone to world class performances on the track and on the track, sorry. And I think it's only a matter of time for someone like Donnelly, like she keeps getting these cross country wins. It's only a matter of time until she translates that into a really quick 5K on the track,
Mm,
for example. Like
mm.
obviously, I'm sure we'll get into it later on. But Megan Keith last year, I know she's younger, but Megan Keith last year obviously was way outside 15 minutes until she got that Diamond League spot, and now look at her. So I think yeah, the jumps can happen. Like it just takes a few opportunities, bit of consistency. So
And look,
yeah,
one aspect of the podium festival which I absolutely loved was the time trial. I thought it was
mm.
chaotic. It was fast paced. It was quick. There was something always going on, and it lasted about 30 minutes or so. I think there was about 27 runners and someone going every single minute. I think it was just getting faster and faster and faster. I think you're constantly clock watching. You honestly, obviously it sounds a bit stupid, but I couldn't take my eyes off of it. Just because
Didn't have a
of
choice, mate. You were
it didn't have a
commentating.
choice. Yeah, exactly. Um, but uh, but it was just I think we need to see more of it is what I'm trying to say here. And I think we can see different formats. And look, people will be anal about it and say, oh, it wasn't a K and it was advertised a K. Look, that was irrelevant. That didn't matter. It was one lap of that circuit. And I think even to the point where, people are anxiously waiting to see what time's coming in. I just thought that format really, really good. And it doesn't exist in the sport right now, and I think it should. And it was a perfect place for 800 runners, and it was a bit of a melting pot for sort of those 815 guys as well.
Yeah, 100%. Aaron Wallace, obviously 234 is what? So you say it was 997, Matt?
No, no, 976. So that 25 meters
976.
short.
Okay,
So what
but
is that? About
two
4 seconds, probably.
yeah, 234 is still electric on there.
Yeah.
For Aaron Wallace, and then James Young on the men's side, 220. Interestingly, obviously coached by Steve Cram. Maybe some people don't know about that, which is quite an interesting pairing because you potentially nothing against James Young, of course, but you potentially think Cram is looking for kind of your super high caliber athletes, you know. So interesting that he's working with people kind of more towards that, I guess,
Look, do
some
you
of the
remember
end of
the
the
thing
sport, you
is,
know.
yeah, we spoke to Waitman. Was it last season? Maybe last season now. I can't remember.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a little while ago, and Laura Waitman
Towards
said,
the end of last season, yeah.
yeah, she got coached by Cram because she sent Cram an email when she was like
Mm,
14, 15 or 16 even. And Cram just worked with her and she said the amount of people who had never asked, Cram had never been asked for someone to coach him. She was one of the very first. And I
mm,
think I wouldn't be surprised if James Young, I mean, Alex Botterill's obviously working with Cram and Cram's doing a great job there. And, yeah, these guys might not be top of the pile right now, but I think they're definitely going to get there under Cram's guidance, depending on what their lifestyle's saying and how much they can commit to the sport and stuff like that. But he's certainly looking good. I mean, 220, yeah, maybe that's worth the 224 on the road and
mm.
sort of on a vaguely, not hand flat track and with a few turns and stuff in there. He's in good nick, so I'm excited to see what. And again, if he's training with Botterill and that group and people like that, I think he's going to run well this summer. And Jesus, chuck another could have another 335, 334 guy amongst the Brits.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously it was dubbed as the Battle of the Brands as well. And great to see loads of different kind of shoe companies represented in there. So don't know if is there any stats on which shoes were coming out on top, or are we not allowed to say that?
Oh yeah, we're definitely not allowed to say that, mate. It was just great to have them all in one place. It really was. They were no, but I think it was very interactive for those as well. And look, there were down periods throughout the afternoon, and look, I knew people who had rocked up and they were literally in race two, and they stayed the whole day, no matter of the weather, no matter it was kind of a bitter breeze, blowing through as well. Um, and they hung out all day and they got food, they got pizza, they got beers, they went and tried on shoes and took them for a little spin and stuff like that. And tried to win prizes and everything. And there was just a lot to do. And I think again, it's just an example of how events should be run. And we've always said for the sport really to grow, I think it does need to break up a little bit into having like events like that being the pinnacle of the distance running world. Um, whether that be
Yeah.
at a world level or what. But obviously Highgate's a massive weekend as well, and just having these weekends throughout the year, which are just mega. Um,
That's it. I just think the names that Barnsley managed to put together for the first one of these, I know obviously Podium's got a history, it's got a caliber, but for the first Podium festival, I think the names he managed to assemble for that kind of first event of this kind is just insane in the first year.
yeah, look,
So
prize money is mega. Prize money is real big. James Young, Aaron Wallace, they're taking home £2,000. Like that's serious cash. And even second place was taking over £1,000. And by the way, in that time trial, three men tied on 222, which is torture. Someone's walked away with 1,000. I think the next person was 500, the next person was 300. So, or something like that. So, to be tied and be, £700 difference in prize money is a hard one to take. But
mm,
you're right. The names he's managed to get over here, and I think that's going to grow it. It's a Athletics licensed event, and now they've got fast times to boast about on that track, like 13:19 and 14:58 or 59 in the women's race. And I think that's only going to attract kind of more internationals. That being said, I think it would have been really good just to have a domestic battle. But look, I think domestic Brits shoot themselves in the foot because they'll moan about potentially internationals coming over. But at the same time, the fact that Gebriwet was there, it takes the pressure off a lot of Brits because they go, brilliant, the race is already going to be fast. I'm not going to have to lead. I can just follow and get dragged along. And I think
mm,
you take a few of those big names out like Gebriwet and these other Kenyans, a few of the Brits, maybe someone like Nick Griggs. I know he's not a Brit, but um, maybe he turns around and he goes, I'll go like, why would I want to run off the front in that 5K?
mm.
I'll go do a 5K. I can get dragged around in, and there's a little bit more competition around that 13:30, 13:20 mark. So double-edged sword, because then you start to take out people like Nick Griggs, and then it's just another 5K at the office.
Yeah. And the thing is, look, Jay Wyman's a world champion. Like you don't want to go and race and not be racing the best. So I do think they'll also relish the opportunity to race against some of these top athletes. So I think having Gabriel there was brilliant, to be honest. Another race then that we have to talk about, the 10 over in California. We built it as a going to be a good one. We're pretty much there, not quite kind of the GB predictions that we potentially thought, but maybe that was a big ask. But phenomenal runs from Paddy Diva and Megan Keith, 27:08 for Paddy Diva, Megan Keith 30:36, both of them ticking off that Olympic standard, which is no joke, by the way. And we'll have to get into those new standards that got announced today as well later on, Matt, as well. But yeah, fantastic runs. Charles Hicks, 27:33, Jack Rowe, 27:54. Unfortunately, Jess Judd DNF'd as well. So hoping she's okay, because I think she sort of collapsed on the track as well. So we're obviously
Mm.
hoping she's okay and that she can bounce back from that. Because as we know, we spoke to her early in the year after Valencia. She's in pretty good nick. So kind of all the best to her. But yeah, let's get into Megan Keith's run, mate, because I think she's someone that's just been phenomenal every time she steps on the track, the grass, the road, for example. But now you're the real deal when you're running Olympic time, aren't you?
Yeah, so Megan nailed the Olympic time. That was 30:40 for the women. She ran 30:36. I thought the Olympic time for the men, I get mixed up between the Olympic and the world time as well, was 27:10, but I believe it's 27 flat. So Diva, 27:08, got the world standard, but missed the Olympic standard. Um, I believe.
Is that
But I
right?
think no, and then I think British Athletics' standard is 27:10, like the steeple's a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit slower. So I think Diva, is inside, but on the results and stuff, it only said world standard. So yeah, a little bit confusing. But yeah, Keith ran exceptionally well, and I think look, it's early days, it's March, but she beat some big talent as well. Some big names. Carissa Schweitzer making a comeback, ran 31 low, and that's who Jess Jubb was running with for a bit of the race towards the end as well before she collapsed. So yeah, I'm not sure if I wonder what's up with Judd, to be fair. I do hope she's okay and she can bounce
Mm,
back from that. And I mean she has been known just to push herself to extreme
mm.
discomforts.
Yeah.
So maybe it
Do we
was
have
just a
like
case of that.
a heat check on that day as well? Because obviously, yeah, over
Maybe.
there, I'm not sure
Yeah.
what the weather was, but like over 10K on the track is grim when it gets hot. So I can imagine the humidity and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully it was just that and nothing more sinister, you know. So yeah, I think you might be right actually about that Paddy Diva stat. But I believe he's fine. Like he'll be going, provided obviously he comes top two at the trials, or probably doesn't even need to do it. Because I think we were talking before if Hicks and Rowe, for example, ran that time too. But I don't think they'll have another crack now. Bar Highgate potentially.
Yeah, mate, that's probably the one to talk about actually is not so much Rowe because he's already got the 5K. And I
Mm,
think I'm not sure he will have a crack at Highgate.
yeah,
I think he's
I
just
don't
gonna
think so.
prepare. I think he's just gonna prepare now. We don't know. I haven't spoke to him, but I think it makes sense for him to prepare for the track season to nail it. Whereas Hicks, I think we're gonna see Hicks at Highgate, baby, which is gonna be awesome. Because I do
Higgs v
think
Charlie Wheeler at Highgate, is it?
Hicks beat Charlie Wheeler at Highgate. Pick
For
your
the
man
second
now.
spot.
But yeah, and someone else we might see at Highgate, Sam Atkin, because he pulled out last minute. Um,
Yeah, that was a surprise, to be honest. I saw that and I was like, wow.
oh boy. Oh,
But yeah, yeah, Paddy Diva, phenomenal shape. We're gonna have to get him back on a podcast. Go back and listen to our original one with Paddy if you're interested and you haven't already. But definitely someone we'll look to get back on because he's kind of kicked on leaps and bounds again. Like had obviously kind of that phenomenal last year where he won NCAs in college. Was was great off it. What was that? The Oregon World Champs that year that he went to. And then yeah, he's been quiet for a couple of years, but obviously paying off for him now. That's set up over in the States with Puma. So yeah, definitely one we'll get back on.
mm, absolutely. Absolutely. So good run from him and that whole Puma group that those boys are training. I think it was a sweaty workout with them. Um, Alistair Craig's group and what do they call themselves again? Is there a name for them? I swear there's a name for them, but maybe just Puma Elite.
Puma
Maybe
Elite running probably.
that's mate, my
Classic
mind's gone
American
blank.
group.
Honestly, my mind's gone blank. I thought there was a name for them, but I think it might just be Puma. But cool group, based out of North Carolina, and yeah, I think Pat Tinnan as well, someone that Brett Robertson mentioned last week in the
Mm.
marathon, running very well. And from what we've heard, and people I've spoke to, Alistair Cragg, his similarities to he learned a lot from Jerry Schumacher, so they train very the overall training is very similar. And I think Rowe alluded to that a little bit. He doesn't like to tell too many people about the training. But I think the way they do speed, the way they do their kind of tempo, longer workouts, and the way they do their just kind of mileage throughout the week is very similar to what Jerry and the Bowerman guys do. Um, so that's quite interesting. And clearly now after a couple of years, he's starting to get success. And and on that, I think do you remember when like Mark told us as well a few years ago? He was like, everyone takes 2 years to really run well under Jerry. And I think
Mm.
Hicks is going through a bit of a transition under Jerry. I think Hicks will be mega next year. This year he's still got the summer to be fair. Jesus. We're writing him off
Oh
because he
yeah,
went
that's the thing.
half in
I
Boston and
think this
Sound.
is this is the thing. We get so carried away with some of these good performances that we're like, oh yeah, it's going to take some time. The guy has just run 27:33 in March, like
Yes. Yep.
so. It's
Yep.
it's, it's not kind of all doom and gloom, is it?
Not at all. Let's quickly review World Cross preview. Preview World Cross. it starts 10 o'clock UK time, 11 o'clock local time, Saturday, 30th of March, so next weekend. And pretty much you've just standard women's under 20 races, first race off, and then there's pretty much a race every half hour. Mixed relay goes just before the senior races, and then senior women at 11:45 our time, UK time, senior men at 12:30. And look, I haven't double checked, but pretty 99% sure this is on the BBC. So if it's not live, it will be on the website or BBC iPlayer. So enjoy. And leading entries, Lum, we are pretty much 10 days out from the World Cross, and I can't find the entries, the full listed entries. I'm only going on different articles where different governing bodies have published their teams, and we've seen who's running, and obviously the British team's been announced, but I'm not going to go through every bloody governing body's website to try and find who's running, and the entries aren't on the World Cross website as of yet. I'm sure they will be in the next few days, but this is where our sport's crap. This is where it lets us down time and time again. You've got the World Cross Country Championships, the biggest event in cross country, and we don't know who the hell is doing it, and we're just over a week out.
Yeah, this is why we need the Michael Johnson track league, because then everything will be solved, or a Netflix series, because then we just know. So that would help. But yeah, it's bonkers, isn't it, mate? Like how is it not like we? What I do rate, they're previewing like Jakob v Josh Kerr already in the summer, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's amazing.
no World Cross start list. Like, come on. No, we're expecting to see some of the big boys though, aren't we? So I don't think we'll be kind of starved of talent in
No,
these
there are
fields,
some
but
big.
it would be nice to see the full list, wouldn't it?
It would. So we can tell you what I know already. And I think by the time people are listening to this podcast, the start list will probably be published and they'll be like, what the fuck are these two on about? Start
As
list will be done
per.
for days. But yeah. But look, Cheptegei, Kiplimo, and Aragari, three of the biggest names in distance running, are all doing it. Confirmed. Cheptegei won in 2019, third last year. Kiplimo, second in 2019, wins last year. Aragao was second last year. That was his World Cross debut. And I don't know what the average 5K time between those guys is, but it's probably 12:39 or something ridiculous. If you count Cheptegei, what, 12:35 or something? Then you got Kiplimo and Aragao, 12:40, 12:41. So, and then their 10K as well, filthy. So top three in the men's race is electric. And so we can look forward to that matchup. On the women's side, again, haven't seen too many big names, but Agnes Ngetic, the women's 10K world record holder, the one who ran 28:46 in Valencia, she's doing it, and she was third last year. So yeah, we're probably looking at her to go and take the win. And look, Ethiopia may have their power force as well. That team may have been published already, the Ethiopian women's team. I haven't sieved the web deep enough to go find it. So apologies. But Lum, one thing I wanted to talk about was prize money, because if you're on the British team, if we were actually sending a solid mixed relay team here, right? We are sending a
Mm.
solid mixed relay team, but I mean, if we were taking some of our biggest names, there's prize money for the mixed relay, and that it down to fourth as well. 4,000 £4,000 per team for fourth, 6,000 for third, 8,000 for second, and 12,000 for first. And I'm like, mate, I mean, we could, Britain could go win that. I'm pretty sure. And then the team medals as well. There's team medals up for grabs. If you're the sixth team, $4,000. So again, if Britain, especially on a women's side, Jess Judd, Abby Donnelly, they might
Mm.
get some good prize money at World Cross, because I mean the top team gets 20,000, second is 16, third is 12. So look, Jess Judd and Abby Donnelly, they go do a job, and maybe Lauren McNeil or someone like that runs well as well, because I think it's three to score. Whew, can walk away with sort of £4,000 each if they sneak a bronze, or even 2,000 if they get fourth. Decent prize
Yeah.
money. Well, I say decent prize money, but good, doable prize money, achievable prize money.
Yeah, for sure. You'd like to think that look, it's very hard to challenge the medals in these World Cross events, but you'd like to think we're shooting for like a top five, top six,
We
in
sh For
in some
sure.
of the teams, you know. So Yeah, obviously, one person you will be able to watch as well, and as you'll have seen from the name of this podcast, will be Callum Johnson, who we're going to hand over to in just a moment because he's going on form, very on form cross country guy at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to see what he can do, like just dominating the UK scene recently, hasn't he been?
He has, and maybe it's a great guest to get on. You know, me struggling with motivation at the start of the episode. Calum Johnson works full time. I think he works in finance. And he's someone who just picks out, I see him as someone who picks out these key races like the World Cross. Clearly has been his goal all year. Well, might not have been, but I think it has been. And he goes and he dominates and he books his ticket. And he's kind of done that a few when he won the National Cross for the first time. Definitely strikes me as someone who just really dialed in for that one race to hit the jackpot on that one weekend, on that one day. So I'll be interested to see what his approach to training and racing is, and also to his views and opinions on cross country, because I think it's an area that we don't discuss enough, how to be a good cross country runner. I think, look, we focus on tracks so much, rightly so, but how do you become a very, very good cross country runner? Because there are opportunities. And I think Callum Johnson is someone who has dominated that and taken those opportunities. And so be excited to hear more. So let's get stuck into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get Callum on the call. And where we go. Look, thanks for listening to us ramble on and enjoy the episode with Callum. Okay, first off, Callum, just welcome to the podcast. You're kind of fresh off that Inter-Counties win, two-time British champion on the mud now. So preparing for World XC, how's it all going?
Yeah, no, good. Thanks for having me on. It's nice to join you guys. But yeah, all good, I think. Yeah, it was nice to come off the back of that inter-counties win, and that's the second one as well, which is always pretty sweet. Albeit I don't think it was very muddy, sadly, but I managed to pull off a win on the dry, and it was short as well. It wasn't even 10K, so the longer the better for me. So to do that there felt pretty sweet, and obviously it being world trial and getting that automatic to world cross, I made it even better. So yeah, obviously really happy. Yeah, can't complain. And you can never take these wins and sort of times for granted, and you have to try and appreciate them because you just don't know if they're ever going to come around again. So it was pretty good. I enjoyed the moment, and yeah, I sort of had my head down since and focusing on that World Cross and then and beyond as well. So pretty good.
Mate, was in the counties always the aim? Was World Cross always the aim this season? You've had a good winter, and obviously we're expecting to see you at nationals without, but obviously that got cancelled. But yeah, had you been preparing, and how had you prepared any differently for the inter counties and kind of with the World Cross in mind, given that look, it's likely it's going to be fast. It's
Yeah,
flat as well on that course
yeah.
profile. It looks like. So had you prepared differently?
Um, Not, to be honest, not really. The World Cross was never really on the radar early on in the winter when we're talking back in like September, October. When I sat down with Alan and we had a chat about what my aims were, European Cross was very much like the top of the list because it's something I've been trying to qualify for years. So that was very much top of the list. But I think the main aim was just to actually have a cross country season. Can't remember the last time, possibly even when I was a junior, that I'd had a full winter of just purely cross country, and I think that's partly because I was a triathlete for a long time, and it was difficult to try and balance the two. But I think the main target was just to get through the winter, race regular cross country, and then whatever came of it was a bonus. We always had in mind European cross, and that was a target because it was something I wanted to achieve. Um, in terms of the World Cross, it was never really an A target. It was always like, well, if it happens, it's a bonus. And there was a bit of uncertainty around World Cross and as to whether it would
Mm.
actually like go ahead. Initially it was meant to be in February and it was meant to be in Croatia, and then once that got postponed, it was like, well, what now? What if? Because I had actually planned to do Berlin half marathon early April, so we weren't sure if it was even going to fit in. And then when it got announced and it was end of March and inter-counties would be the trial, the plan was to always race inter-counties, whether it was World Cross trial or not. And it just happened to be what it was. I hadn't changed any training because, like I said, it wasn't really an A target. It was Berlin half marathons is the main goal of sort of the early spring, end of winter. So training's been focused around that more than anything. So yeah, when I found out in the counties was possibly going to be our 8K, I was a bit like, oh, I've been training for a half marathon, and obviously world and national cross being like 12, 13. So yeah, so I'm just sort of like, it was like, it might sound a bit awful, but qualifying for World Cross was just a bonus, and yeah, obviously for it to happen is awesome. Because yeah, I have to be realistic in that like World Cross is a different level, and for me, it's going to be a learning experience, and it's going to be different. I'm going to be racing it very differently than say maybe other races that I've done, but it'll just be really nice to be there, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Lots to unpack in there. But one thing that stuck out for me, obviously, you mentioned that Euro cross. Was that did you see that as a real breakthrough performance for you? Like obviously you go into the Worlds now, but a Euro cross team is probably one that's notoriously hard to make.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely feel like it was. I feel like it's been a long time coming. I just missed out as a junior. I think I was seventh, and then I just didn't do it for years because of triathlon commitments. And then eventually, when I did do it again 2 years ago, and I just missed out again, I think Jake Smith got the place ahead of me by about 5 seconds. I just I'd never really got Liverpool right, and I was always dependent on what the conditions would be like. And I think this year, I just sort of mentally got the race right, because it's a bizarre race and it's a crazy race, and it's a high quality race. It's probably the biggest domestic cross country in the winter calendar, if I'm honest, more competitive than nationals in the counties. And yeah, I just got it right this year. Whether it was a breakthrough, I don't know, but well, you could definitely say that. In my eyes, like I should have made that team a long time ago, but I just never got around to doing it. But yeah, so it felt like, yeah, it did feel like a bit of a breakthrough in that sense. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, no, I mean, it was a great run, and you backed it up with a good run in Brussels as well on some very, very heavy, muddy conditions. So I'm sure you enjoyed that. But just quickly, I wanted to ask you, talk about Berlin half. Are you going to still do that? What weekend is that?
Yeah, so that is the weekend after World Cross, so 7th of April,
Okay.
if I'm right.
Yep.
So that still is the plan. I'll try and go there. And yeah, we've had to adjust things the last couple of weeks because yeah, I would have been sort of heavy in a half marathon week right now, but we're just backing things off a little bit because you have to respect World Cross, and I can't be going into World Cross in heavy training because you've got to just appreciate the fact that it's a different level, and I need to go there and not as fresh as a daisy, but definitely not tired and not in sort of hard training. So we'll have a couple of easy weeks, and then what happens in Berlin happens in Berlin. But yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
Well, you are, I mean, me and Ollie were talking a little bit as well. I feel like you're one of the most underrated men in the game right now. Just especially when it comes to the cross country, you're naturally very, very good at it. We wanted to know if you train for it. I mean, by the sounds of it, you're just good at it and you don't actually train for it too much. Like you said, you've got other focuses, whether it be half marathons and stuff like that. So does it just come naturally? And if so, why?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, and I really appreciate that's really kind of you to say, like, you know, like I'm one of the most underrated because at times I do feel that way as well. Like I don't feel like I get the recognition I deserve sometimes, and I feel like that my whole career has been a bit like that, even in triathlon. Um, but yeah, like, do I train for it? Yes and no. I do train on the grass, definitely, and I do train on the mud. But that's not out of like, oh, I'm going to do that to prepare for a cross country. I do it because I love it, and I think that's the thing. Like, I I love cross country running, and I always have since I started running at like 16, 17, properly anyway. And getting on the grass, albeit whether that's on a Saturday morning or a Thursday evening in the summer or whatever, like I actually enjoy that. Like it makes me enjoy training. And I almost get excited for it. And I think like that's key for me. Like if I spend too much time on the track or looking at a watch, I just get, a little bit distracted and forget why I'm actually doing it and why I enjoy it. And getting on the grass, say on a Saturday morning in the winter when it is muddy and it's horrendous and it's windy and whatever, like just I get quite a lot of enjoyment from that, and I definitely think that's helped me perform in cross country races for sure. But I think maybe I think naturally I'm probably better at it than I am on the road or the track, and that's probably to do with like the way I run. It might be the triathlon background too, like that having that strength base. Because I'll be honest, like I'm not the most dynamic of runners. I don't look like a track runner. I don't look like a Steve Ovett when I'm running. Like, I have sort of very little knee lift. I am very efficient, which I think will help when it comes to the marathon in years to come. Um, but yeah, like I think sort of my style does favour the cross country. There's very little wasted energies, which is why I think I move quite well across that kind of surface, especially when it's muddy and especially when it is rolling and hilly. Um, but yeah, I'm excited for sort of years to come, and I hope that European cross can be staged on courses like Brussels again, because I think like that was a good taster. And um, first one, I probably was a little bit overwhelmed by the situation, because the aim was to just get there. But I'd like to think in years to come, I could maybe get a bit higher up the field. But I think that'll be dependent on courses and stuff.
Mhm. Well, I do think like cross country success is always a kind of it's a catalyst, isn't it, for performances on the track and the road as well. And even if it's coming kind of later in your career than you expect, I still do think there is that pathway.
Yeah, for sure. And like my approach to training, I'll say my approach, when I do chat with Alan, my coach, like everything is quite old school and it's quite traditional, and I get a lot of, enjoyment from that. I train a lot without a watch. A lot to feel. There's not a lot of like, there's a lot of thought goes into my training, but I don't spend a lot of time in labs or anything like that. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to get on training camps a lot more into altitude, but that's just the way life is, and it's difficult to do that. But yeah, I'd like to, I'm actually going to have a go on the track. I say a go on the track. I'm not going to have a full track season, but I'm going to do a bit of track racing this year, and because I know that is my weakness. And if I am going to target the marathon in years to come, I want, I need to have that leg speed, and I need to get my sort of 5K, 10K times down. So I'm not going to just shy away from that because I'm not as good at it as I am on the cross country. But I like to think, the strength background of the cross country and the triathlon that I did in the past, and then with a bit more specific, faster work on the track and on the road, I'd like to think that would pay off in years to come, on the road.
Yeah, we'll get to the roads in a little bit. I just wanted to clarify who your coach is, then, Calum. Alan.
Yeah, Alan Story. You probably heard of him.
Oh, we have indeed. I didn't realize. How long have you been working together?
We've been, I'm going to say like a couple of years at least now. Yeah, like about 2.5 years now.
Fantastic. How does that
Yeah,
relationship work then? Because that's obviously over a distance, isn't it?
yeah. So Alan lives down south, and I'm obviously up in the northeast. And it's great because Alan spent a lot of time up here when he was coaching back in the 80s, and he was coaching Mike McLeod and in the group up here. But it works quite well because like I'm 30 this year and I've got a lot of experience myself. And, one thing I've gotten good at over the last 5 years is listening to my own body and knowing what works and what doesn't, and when to sort of back off if I need to. And And I think that's good because like Alan's not the type of coach who'll be like, just do this, do that, do this. It's very much like I'll suggest this. Or sorry, he'll suggest something and I'll go, we'll have a chat about it. And then if I disagree, then I'll be honest and say that like maybe we can back that off or change that and change the location or reduce whatever. And it works very much two ways. And that's what I really like about it. And I like that Alan is, straight to the point. And he's very honest, and I'm honest as well. And I think that's the key thing is like there's no shying away. Like if I cut a session short because I'm just feeling absolutely terrible, I'll just say, look, like I've cut the session short, I've gone to bed, and that's that. I won't go away. I won't go to him and say, oh yeah, I just couldn't hit times today. I was feeling a bit off, or I'll say, yeah, the session was fine, and even though it wasn't, like there has to be that element of trust. But it's worked really well, and the reason well, it came about really weird, which we can talk about. It's actually a funny story. But when I was looking for a coach at the time anyway, because I was self-coached and I was transitioning from triathlon to running, and I wanted to have a go at the marathon, and I thought I've got no idea what I'm getting into here, and I need some guidance. And I think Alan's been sort of really pivotal and key for that. And I know he will be in years to come because I do see this as like a long-term relationship. And although, like I said, I am nearly 30, I feel like this is just the start of my own like athletic career because I am quite late to athletics and running because of that triathlon background. But yeah, I feel like Alan's the right guy. We get on really well. We have a laugh. It's a very relaxed relationship. And yeah, it's a very two-way coaching relationship. I'd obviously like to see him a lot more, but we chat on the phone regularly. And it just seems to work.
You said that it's old school, you don't use a watch that much. How did you kind of keep a tab on you then?
So yeah, I mean, obviously, when I say I don't use a watch that much, I don't wear a watch on like easy runs and stuff like that. And I don't record them, but I do wear it in training, like sessions, and unless it's on the grass, of course, then I just use it because we run to time and not to like pace or distance. Um, so say on the track, running your session 6 by a mile or whatever it may be, yeah, I report them times back, sort of report how I feel. And I guess he'll probably track that over time. And then we'll start to adjust things. If I am getting a bit fitter, then the target times may change. But then also, like, it's not always about time. And it's not always about, like, I need you to hit this time. It's like, I need you to run at this sort of effort level. And this sort of like heart rate range because like I do have a heart rate monitor as well and we can sometimes track that. But a lot of it is to feel, and I think that's just like a product of like the last, well, 10 years of training as an elite athlete, albeit in triathlon, is that I do know what a certain session should be. I know how that should feel like. That might change a little bit when it comes to the track or training for something a bit more specific, but for the stuff we've been doing, that works quite well. Yeah, and I don't have access to sports science and a lot of the sort of things that other people do, what other elite athletes do. So to me, like, yeah, I could get in a lab, but it's pointless getting in a lab once a month. Sorry, like once a year sort of thing. It needs to be a regular thing, and I can't do that. And then also working full time as well, like you have to take that into account. In that some days just yeah, there's only so much you can like plan, because there has to be a bit of flexibility in the schedule for the days that I just don't feel right, I guess, or don't feel ready to train hard.
Yeah, and how did you first get in touch with Alan then, like when you were coming out of triathlon?
Um, so, so I was actually so I, my last triathlon race was 2019, because COVID in 2020 sort of put a stop to it. And I actually trained in 2020 as if I was going to go back to triathlon like that. And I still had ambitions of trying to make the team in Paris. And then, yeah, like something just changed in lockdown that, like, and I just sort of felt like, do you know what, like I need to step away from triathlon for a bit because mentally I just wasn't quite there and I wasn't receiving the support and I was very much on my own up in the Northeast. I'd moved back up here just before COVID. And I decided I just need a bit of a change. So I started just running and I was self-coaching. And I thought when racing started happening again in 2021, I went down to Birmingham for the European 10,000 Cup, which
Mm.
um it's obviously back at Parliament Hill now. And I had raced and raced in the B race, and it wasn't pretty. It was a bit of a crappy race, if I'm honest. I'd gone out too hard in the first half, and I just struggled in the second half, and I was just doing a bit of a cool down around the track, and I heard this guy shout, and I'm not going to swear on the podcast, but he said something like, you're not a such and such track runner. And I like looked behind and like had to like look twice. And I just sort of kept running. He went, you probably don't know who I am. And I was like, right, this guy's actually talking to me. So I went back to him and he was like, I'm Alan, nice to meet you. And I was like, oh, I know who you are now. And I think, there's a bit of a thing in the Northeast, like he's a big name in the Northeast, like especially because he coached people like Mike McLeod, and I'm actually good friends with Mike McLeod and his family, and obviously his know his son Ryan and Mark, and he was obviously coaching them as well. So I knew who he was, and he clearly knew who I was, like albeit not very well. Um, and he just started talking to me. He was like, "I've just watched your race," and he says, "Yeah, you're definitely not a track runner." Um, he says, and then to be honest, nothing really happened after that. We were just joking on. He was asking where my dad was because he hadn't seen him for a long time since my dad was actually probably running and training when he was running in his group. Um, and yeah, like I say, we just having a bit banter on. We watched the air race. Alan was coaching Emil at the time, so like he was very much like into watching that and really keen for Emil to do well, which he did that race. And then yeah, like it sort of went quiet for a week, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to him. I'm just gonna give him a call, and I'm gonna just say it how it is, and say, look, I'm self-coached. I could do with some guidance. Are you in a position to help? And yeah, that happened, and then he was very much like, yeah, like that's absolutely fine. Like I'd love to do that. And it just sort of started as a bit of like, um, why don't you keep coaching yourself, but why don't you send me what you're doing so I can get a picture of like what you are doing, the sort of volume, the sort of intensity, and then I can start to input a little bit and we can sort of change things like really gradually. Because I
Mm.
think the worst thing you could do would be to step in as a new coach and be like, right, new program, here you go, go and do it. But it was very much the changes probably happened over the period of around like even more than 6 months, like probably up to a year before I fully transitioned onto like what he would probably say is his training and his coaching. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of how it came about. I'd love to like go into detail on the full conversation we had, but it's probably a little bit explicit for the podcast.
But it sounds amazing. I mean, how did that one-off comment make you feel then? Clearly, it almost works like reverse psychology, him calling you not a track runner. You're like, geez, cheeky guy, but you've ended up working together. So initially, were you just like, I bet you just didn't know what to make of it, did you?
Yeah, I was a bit like almost like I mean I wasn't in the best frame of mind anyway because you
Yeah.
never are after a crap race. But he actually put a smile on my face and it made me laugh. And I thought, you know what, like this guy's definitely a bit of me, like not too serious. And yeah, I mean he was right. Like I know I'm not a track runner. I very much knew that anyway then. Like
Mm,
I've seen enough videos of myself running to think, yeah, I do not look like I don't know, like a Steve O'Gara, like an Alex Yeh or someone like
mm,
that.
mm.
And yeah, I sort of just took it as a bit of like, well, you know what, maybe you can help turn me into not a track runner, but you can help, you know, turn that negative into a bit more of a positive. And that's sort of how it went. And yeah, like I said, it works really well, the relationship. And yeah, I feel like it's just still early days as well, and I feel like there's a lot more to come from myself, and I still think I'm learning. And you know, Alan's not the type of guy to shy away from, like, you know, people who don't work hard. I think like that's the good thing. I think that's what earns the respect in the relationship, is that like I am a really hard worker, and I always have been, and I don't shy away from the fact that it's going to be hard, and he's very honest about that as well. You know, he'll be honest and say something's going to be hard, and that's absolutely fine. But I think there's definitely, I think it's just that, you know, I think he enjoyed coaching when he was coaching in the Northeast, you know, a long time ago in the 80s and 90s. And I think for him, it's probably a nice revisit to the past by coaching me, because I am very much a Northeast runner and a Northeast club runner. Just like, you know, your Brendan Fosters were, and your Mike McLeod's and Steve Crams were back in the day. So yeah, it's nice to have that sort of going again.
Mm. Yeah, and I think you definitely have that reputation as well of someone who works hard. Like, I've never seen you train, for example, but that's how I'd always kind of refer to you if I was talking about you on the podcast, for example. But look, you're a working man as well. Like you mentioned, you're working full time. What are you doing for work?
God, I'm not going to bore you with what I do on a daily basis, but I work at Ernst and Young, and I work in US tax, specifically in private equity and real estate. It's quite a niche area of finance, and it's quite a demanding area of finance, as you can imagine. Like, the US tax system is a lot more complex than the UK tax system. Yeah, there's long hours. We have busy periods. Now is a really busy period. So is the autumn. Sorry, late summer into early autumn. And yeah, you know what? I get a lot of enjoyment from working full time now. It definitely gives me balance in life, and puts a little bit of a different perspective on my athletics career. Um, I'd love to work a little bit less. I'm trying to work on that now, especially when it comes to, you know, the marathon, because I think that's going to be necessary. But yeah, I'll not go into detail on what I do on a daily basis at work, because for most people it's probably really bloody boring. But yeah, I do have a bit of a mathsy, financy brain, so it's quite nice.
But the bottom line is you're a very busy man, and you know, you're running in and around that. I was going to say, are you currently getting any sponsorship? Are you in talks with anyone?
No, no, I'm not. Badly. I'd love
I think
to.
you like it that way, don't you? You like
You know what? It's nice in a way, because there's, you know, I'm very much like, just, you know, this is what I do. I love running,
Mm,
and I'll do it regardless. You know,
mm,
if I'm getting paid to do it, that's brilliant. If I'm not, then it's brilliant as well, because I just absolutely love running, and it's a massive part of my life. Sport is in general. You know, it was the same when I was doing triathlon. Um, but you know, some support, you know, it would make life a lot easier, because I do spend an awful lot of money on running shoes. And you know, I'd love to be able to take a bit of time off work and
mm.
spend a bit of time at altitude and on training camps, because you know, it does make a difference.
Big
And
difference.
at the moment, my training camps are a week in Portugal when work's a little bit quiet. But yeah, like some support would be lovely, whether that's a kick contract or whether it's, you know, more than that. I don't
Mm,
know.
mm,
I don't know why it's never happened. You know, I'm probably not the best at self-promotion. I'm not the best at recording, you know, what I do on a daily basis. So it's partly my own fault, I guess. Maybe you could argue that, but you know, I do like to stay under the radar, and I don't like to post what I do on social media,
mm,
which is probably a bit of a downfall, really, because that's what brands want a lot of the time. They want to see what you're doing, and yeah, like I like to keep what I do quiet. I'm not trying to hide anything, but
Mm.
it's just probably just my personality to just sort of, yeah, just go under the radar a little bit, work hard, there's nothing fancy about any of my
Mm.
training. Like, I could record it, but it'd be a blurry camera and it would be me holding it probably. And I don't imagine anyone wants to stand in a muddy field in the middle of January. Like, I need to buy myself a drone or something like that, and then nobody has to do it. Like someone can sit in the car.
I don't know, mate.
Mm.
I think keep being you. I think it's cool. To be honest, you do rock up to meets under the radar and stuff as well, and you always turn up in very good shape as well. So clearly, it's working for you.
No, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, one thing we obviously wanted to ask you about. Obviously, you mentioned you're doing Berlin half. When is the marathon? When are you gonna have another crack at that? Because you got a 2:13 PB, and you kind of mentioned the half and things. Like, when are you gonna really kind of go all in and have another crack at that one?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and I haven't really thought too much about it as yet. It's definitely in the back of my mind as to there's definitely going to be a point where I do take a step back from work and I do commit a little bit more time and energy into running, and because I feel like that's what the marathon is going to require. And when I see people like Phil, I know Phil pretty well from my time in
Mm.
Leeds, and I see, Phil. It's amazing to see because it's just a product of someone who just works damn hard,
Mm.
and someone who's consistent, someone who's smart with their training, and someone who knows how to pull it out on the when it matters. And I feel like we're sort of probably quite similar athletes and from that perspective, albeit like Phil physically is a lot quicker than I am, like and his times are like only what I could dream of on the track and stuff. But from a mental perspective, I feel like, it inspires me to see what Phil has done. It makes me believe that maybe, there is a possibility, with a bit more sort of time committed to that I could, you know, sort of get a bit more out of the marathon because yeah, the 2:13 was great, but it wasn't the perfect day. It was far from a perfect day, to be honest. I ran the full thing on my own.
Mm.
Albeit you would think in Seville, like there's loads of people around you, but there just wasn't. And then I actually tore my hip flexor at 21 mile and I'd stopped and I thought I did a bit of a Sifan Hassan and I stretched it out and I thought it was just a tight hip, a tight quad. And I sort of shuffled my way through the last 5 miles and dropped off the pace quite a lot. So to run 2:13 and um, given the circumstances and even Alan would say now like you ran that off not really much specific marathon training
Mm.
because things just haven't gone well. When I did that, things just weren't. It just wasn't the perfect build up. Well, I don't think there's such thing as a perfect build up anyway. But
Mm.
um, what in his eyes, what would be a good build up, I think would be a lot more than what I actually did.
Mm.
So I think like given I ran that in Seville, there's definitely room for more for sure. Um, but like I said, I do need to come back to it because I couldn't do it now. I just physically and
Mm.
mentally just couldn't apply myself because I just simply don't have the time with work. Um, but I like to think in years to come, when I do take a step back from work at some point, and I can spend a bit more time on training camps and, recovering because that's the important thing in marathon running. I
Mm.
think like there's a lot more recovery required. Um, yeah, so I think I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm thinking more LA in 2028, like as a
Right.
long-term aim. That's 4.5 years away. So yeah, whether it's next year that I decide to sort of take a back seat at work or the year after, I don't know. Obviously, don't want to leave it too late,
Mm.
but I also need to think about like actually like being able to live and be able to afford living
Mm.
and that's obviously why I do work, because I'm not paid to run and I never have been. So yeah.
Jesus, the standard might be 204 by LA28.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, but then the shoes might be like triple carbon plated.
this is true. This is a good point. Hopefully, the tech's always ahead of the standards. Just wanted to finish up being Callum. Just a typical week under Alan's story, because I think that would be quite insightful.
Yeah, for sure. Pretty well. Let's say, I mean, let's start off on a Monday. An easy double. Should I say every easy day is a double. So that'll be Monday, Wednesday. Or easy doubles. Tuesday's a session, typically on the track or in the winter can be on the roads, and I tend to go to Gateshead to the club for that. One, because I love being around the club, and I love being around sort of the grassroots and the amateur running scene, because I just get a lot of enjoyment from it. So I'd maybe do, let's say, I don't know, 10 by a K, 2:55, 3 minutes. That might be a typical Tuesday. Wednesday, easy double. Thursday, in the winter, something a bit more longer, tempo based. Yeah, anything from sort of between 10 and 14, 15 mile. The pace, nothing too fast. There's never really a set pace. It's just relaxed, hard running. Then Fridays tend to be my easiest day of the week. Sometimes there's an easy double again, but sometimes just one run. And then every few weeks that might be a rest completely. And then Saturday, sometimes not every week, but we might double up that day. Everyone talks about the double threshold. Like it is part of my program. So that might be some threshold in the morning and a threshold in the evening, and that might total between 12 and 15 miles of threshold for the day, albeit it's split into two. Or if that's not a double threshold, because maybe I'm doing something on the Saturday, I don't know, I might be going surfing in the afternoon, or going out with some pals or whatever, then I'll just be straight with them and say, look, I don't think double threshold's going to work today, because I'll be knackered come the evening. So we'll change things around and we'll do something a bit higher volume. That might be on the grass, and it might be 10 by a mile or something like that. But yeah, I do a lot of threshold running, a lot of aerobic running. And I think that's why, cross country is always like favored me. That might not, that obviously it's quite specific to cross country and half marathon, 10K half marathon, but that would obviously change throughout the year. But that's a typical sort of winter week. And then a Sunday, probably just an easy 90 minutes up to 2 hours. Sometimes, as I say, I'm not going into too much detail, but sometimes that might change depending on how easy or hard Saturday is. We might pick things up at the back end for the last half an hour. But yeah, just time on feet on a Sunday. Sometimes I get out with some of the lads from the club and just have a chat, and then go for a full English after or whatever. So yeah.
Love it.
The biggest
love
thing
it.
I'm taking away from that is surfing in Gateshead.
Well, I don't live in Gateshead. I do run for Gateshead, but I live in Newcastle. But obviously, I don't know if many people know, but we actually have some incredible beaches up here in the northeast, like white sand beaches, and some decent surf as well. The surf actually comes around the top of the country from the Atlantic, and we get some good swells. But I picked up surfing in lockdown actually, and yeah, I've been doing it for 4 years now, and I absolutely love it. I love being in the water. I think like I always have, even from being a kid, and it's like my release, my other hobby from daily life and from running. And yeah, it gives me something to do when I go on holiday abroad as well. Go and surf.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to hear. And what sort of mileage are you totaling for that sort of typical week?
That tends to be around the 100, somewhere between 90 and 100.
Decent.
It never really goes over 100. The only time I've went over 100 is when I've been marathon training, and that's when I've been abroad somewhere. Like last year before Seville, I was in Portugal for a couple of weeks, just because of the recovery time and stuff. But Yeah, somewhere between 90 and 100 on average.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, look, Callum, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. Great to chat to you, and obviously all the best for World XC in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. I appreciate you having me on, and it's been good to talk. Yeah, so yeah, thanks.
Have you got
Uh,
any, just before we finish, have you got any aims for World XC? I think we've covered a lot, but have you got like a position that you want to be inside, or is it just kind of like soak up that experience because it's going to be relentless?
I think, yeah, very much soak up that experience.
Mm,
Just appreciate the fact that, I'll get the chance to wear another GB vest and, compete at the highest level
mm,
of distance running. You look at the
yeah.
people that are going to be there, and, they're incredible athletes and they're performing at the top level of sport. Some of them probably likely to go on and win Olympic medals and titles this summer. So I think just, yeah, soak it up, enjoy being there, enjoy being with the team. In terms of my own ambitions and from a results perspective, I think, being as high up as a European athlete as possible, really.
Mm.
And yeah, you obviously like us Brits are a team, but we'd be quite competitive amongst each other. And I think that'll be good because I think we'll be all. I'd like to think we'd be all pretty close to each other, and um, yeah. So, but very much just soak up it, soak up the atmosphere, enjoy the experience, and yeah, just be grateful for just being there.
Awesome.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Well, all the best then.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks, bud.